Do you find yourself constantly dealing with shame and guilt? Has it been this way for a long time? I can personally speak as an authority on guilt and shame because I spent my whole life inundated with guilt and shame. That's just been my primary mode of living. It's just how I came into this world. I just felt shame all the time and felt guilty all the time. And this came as a result personally of just feeling responsible for everyone. I just always felt that way. And so as a result, I had to find a bunch of killer ways, really good, strong techniques that would allow me to not feel guilty all the time. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about guilt and shame and how to not feel that way and how to get rid of it in a way that you can really trust will work, and trust is for your highest and best benefit. And I kind of put it this way because if, for those of us who deal with a lot of guilt and shame, like the reason why we do is because we think that we're supposed to feel guilty and supposed to feel ashamed. And so it's really about letting go of that obligatory factor around it so that we can actually let it go. And so that's what we're going to get into today. I'm going to aim to keep it short. I'm going to aim to keep it under 20 minutes. And I think this will really help you, especially if you've suffered with it for a long time. I think this is a very important perspective to internalize. So without further ado, let's get into how to deal with guilt and shame. If we've never met, my name is Brent. I'm an actualization coach, and that means that I help you become that which you were meant to become and to do that which you came here to do. So if you're experiencing any friction or hiccups in that process, then check out the links below where I show you how I do that, where I help you do these things. So let's get into it. So for those of us who feel guilt and shame, this stems from the basic belief that we have done something wrong or that there is something wrong with us. So there is this idea of wrongness about it. And there is a belief, as I was hinting at before, around guilt and shame, where it's like guilt and shame are the punishment for the wrongness. So to be in a state of guilt or shame is to be in a state of suffering. Like it just feels bad. Like when you feel guilty, it just sucks. And it makes you feel like ostracized. It makes you feel like just uncomfortable in your experience. And there's this idea about it where it's like, I'm going to feel this way until I've felt guilty enough, sort of like the way a punishment works or a penance works, where you just feel that way until you reach this point of having felt punished enough, after which you are redeemed and then you go on with your life. Although that's the idea behind it, but generally it doesn't work out that way. Generally, we just feel guilty forever. Like just for the remainder of our lives, we just feel that way forever. And even that would be okay if we felt, say, just guilty or shameful about one thing. But for a lot of us, especially if this video is speaking to you so far, we are predisposed towards guilt and shame such that we find more and more things to feel guilty and ashamed of. So that like not only do the first few things never go away, but we just add more to the pile as time goes on. So by the time we're in our 40s, our 50s, by the end of our lives, we're just like, it's like, oh my God, thank God I'm at the end of my life. It's like, wow, this is just too much to bear, too much to deal with, unless we learn things like what we're about to learn here about how to put it down. And so again, as I was hinting also, the idea here is about giving ourselves permission to put down guilt and shame. Now, this is tricky because you probably don't need me to tell you that there's no need for guilt and shame. So in other words, if I say to you, hey, just stop it. Stop feeling guilty. Stop feeling ashamed. It doesn't help anybody. There's no need for it. Just let it go. You would hear me say that and you would agree in theory. You'd say, yeah, like I would love to. Show me how, Brent. Like I'm just not able to. I'm not able to. And so what we're going to look at here is that even though you agree with me on a surface level, I assume that you're in agreement with what I said, that, you don't need to feel guilty and ashamed. Nevertheless, the fact that you do feel guilty and ashamed, nevertheless, means that you think you should feel guilty and ashamed. After all, it's a form of self-induced suffering. It's not like it happens on its own. It's not like we've evolved through the billions of years to torture ourselves. It really means that on a deep level, we feel obligated to feeling bad about it as a way of making good on this perceived crime that we've committed. And so this is something to sort out as well. So in order to sort this all out, we are going to discuss guilt and shame's alternative, guilt and shame's remedy, which is forgiveness. And I'll say right off the top that forgiveness is actually poorly understood in our culture. Forgiveness is widely misunderstood. And what I mean by that is that we generally conceptualize forgiveness as something that we kind of decide to do, where, like, imagine if you were going to forgive somebody else for a minute, you say, all right, that thing was bad, but I forgive you. And then it's kind of done. But that type of forgiveness, I would argue here, is not real forgiveness. It's sort of like a performative forgiveness where the emotional charge and the pain around it has not dissipated and is still there. But we've just decided that we're going to put it behind us and we're cool now. We're cool, whatever. I guess I'll just get over it. But it's still there. We just don't want to talk about it anymore. Perhaps because we don't know how to make it okay. So we're going to pretend like it's in the past. But really it's this like stone in our shoe that we're going to ignore going forward. That is what I call false forgiveness. And that's the commonplace forgiveness that we do societally. That is different from real forgiveness. So here are 5 qualities of real forgiveness so that you can really get a sense of what it's like and how it operates. Number 1, forgiveness is natural. Forgiveness is discerning between natural and unnatural guilt. So here's what I mean by that. And this is a Seth concept from the Seth material. It's very interesting. If you are a child and you are a young child, say you're 3 or 4, and you're learning how to share and you're learning how to play with your friends, and you see a toy that one of your friends is playing with, and you want that toy. So what do? You go up and grab it, right? There's a perfect logic behind it. I want that toy, I go and I grab it. But then you grab it out of your friend's hand and your friend starts to cry and they say, I want it back. And then it becomes clear in that moment that you did something to hurt your friend. And so then what happens as a result? There is pain that you experience, assuming that you're at the emotional maturity to be able to experience this pain, like assuming you're ripe for the experience. There is pain because you cause pain in your friend. And so that sense of pain that was created in your friend and also in yourself is what we can call natural guilt. It shows to you that you violated a code that you were not aware of until just this moment. And it registers to you as a feeling of wrongness. Now, importantly, this is not wrongness in the form of some kind of judgment, like somebody would point their finger and say, that's wrong, because in one manner of speaking, there is no experience more natural, totally natural. One more time, natural than this, right? This is, for example, an experience that is experienced by all children in all countries, in all communities, across all space and all time, as long as we've been people, right? It's basically a rite of passage. Like there's no moving into maturity of any kind before experiencing this first. So from this perspective, in no way can we call this wrong. You having taken the toy from your friend and causing your friend to cry. In no way can we call this wrong or bad. Just the opposite. It's incredibly good and holy, like very holy, sacred, important rite of passage in a human life. So you can see this important distinction that we're making here. This is a perfectly important thing that you go through, but what you are going through is the learning that you have violated an ethical code, and that's why you feel bad. And so that feeling of badness is as natural as putting your hand in a fire and going, oh, I see, I don't like that. It's just an emotional pain instead of a physical pain. So that's what natural guilt is. That's what it is. And so unnatural guilt is when you take that feeling and sustain it over time. Because you could make an argument, I'm not going to, but you could make an argument that we have evolved to experience and work with natural guilt in the way that I was describing it. But it becomes unnatural once we drag it along and go, oh, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I did that yesterday. And then we make it into a judgment about me where I say, what's wrong with me that I did that? How do I undo this, right? You know, I just regret it so much. I regret it so much that I caused pain. I can't believe I caused pain for this person. And so now you're taking natural guilt and making it unnatural. You are extending it and turning it into a punishment and turning it into suffering. And now what was once a healthy process is unhealthy because we are creating suffering from nothing. And it doesn't matter if we create suffering for somebody else or if we create suffering for ourselves. We are still, in both cases, creating suffering for God's creation, if you don't mind the theistic twist. We are still creating suffering for phenomenal existence. We are still creating suffering for consciousness. And this is a maladaptive process. And this is something that serves no one and should be brought to a close as swiftly as is possible. So that's the difference between natural and unnatural guilt. And so therefore, one of the 5 qualities of forgiveness is that forgiveness is natural. So it is a when forgiveness washes in and washes away the guilt, it's a natural thing. So number 2. The second quality of forgiveness is that forgiveness implies space. So what I mean by this is that in the great universe, in the great infinite universe, there is room for everything. And it's important to note that whereas there are truly terrible things that have happened on this planet and are happening on this planet, and that they can be judged as truly terrible by us as humans, the fact that they exist means that there is a place for them in this world. It means that they are sanctioned. And it means that there's ultimately, you have to really scale out from the most ultimate perspective, there is no difference between good and bad events. There's nothing that happens in the world or in the universe that is unholy. If it happens, it is holy. And so, what this implies is that when we cause suffering for others such that it causes us to feel guilt or shame, this causing of suffering comes from a place of asleepness or lack of consciousness or lack of maturity. And there is room in the universe for that process. There is room in the universe for unconscious activities so that we as conscious beings can make our way into maturity. There is room for it. It is sanctioned. We are not damned, in other words. We are not condemned. There's room for mistakes. There's room for unconscious activity. So that is what is meant by forgiveness implies space. There's no God out there, in other words, that is angry at us, impatient with us. There's no God out there that looks at what we do and said, no, 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 that's not what I intended for you when you were created. Just the opposite. God knew that when the universe was created, that everything would be created, everything would be done. No avenues would be unexplored. And so there's space for every avenue of experience. Number 3, forgiveness is baked in and automatic. I particularly like this one. So once again, forgiveness is baked in and automatic. And so what is meant by that is that as soon as you take the toy out of your friend's hand and cause suffering, it's not like there's anybody that decides that you're forgiven. Even if your friend says, I forgive you, like that's one form of forgiveness as we were discussing. But in terms of you being forgiven as a soul, as an entity, as a person, in terms of you being forgiven, it is done as quickly as the action is done. It is automatic. It is baked in. There's no lag between the transgression and the forgiveness. The forgiveness meets you right there. And that's how immediately available forgiveness is. It's right from that moment. And so if you have not found that forgiveness yet, it's still available for you right now. And it has been this whole time. Number 4, forgiveness is an expression of wisdom, not worthiness. So what I mean by this is that if there's forgiveness that you are looking for, if there's forgiveness that's not been available for you, the issue here is not worthiness. There's a cultural idea that we hold that forgiveness is a matter of having earned, having suffered enough, or being good enough, or being of high enough quality that you can finally be forgiven. And there's this old school Catholic idea. I come from a Catholic upbringing where you do confession with the priest and then the priest assigns you 5 Hail Marys. Not the football thing, but the prayer thing, or for Lord's prayers. And then when you say them, then you're good. But then the idea is that this is performative. This is a permission slip where when you say the 5 Our Fathers prayers, then you may permit yourself to be forgiven, to receive forgiveness, because the priest said it's okay. And why does the priest say it's okay? Because the priest says it on behalf of God. Man, I gave you this whole talk. I believe it's the most recent one before this video on authority. It's either the one before or the one before that, where we talk about authority, and it touches beautifully on this subject here of authority. Nevertheless, you can either borrow authority or earn it, right? Or you can just, I put earn in air quotes if you didn't see, or you can just decide that forgiveness is available now, because forgiveness is an expression of wisdom. Wisdom, culturally we think that there is wisdom in withholding forgiveness, but of course this is false. Wisdom is in allowing forgiveness now. The sooner you move to forgiveness, the more wise it is. And why is this so? Because it's wise to bring to a close all artificial suffering. And then 5 of 5, the last quality of forgiveness, is that it liberates all involved parties. So when you find forgiveness, when you allow forgiveness in, when you receive forgiveness for having taken the toy from your friend, and you permit yourself to be forgiven, then you are liberated and your friend is liberated. Everybody in the vicinity is liberated. By contrast, if anybody is held in lack of forgiveness, then it means both the victim and the perpetrator are locked karmically into that event. It's the victim is victimized and the perpetrator, the transgressor, remains in a place of guilt or in wrongness in such a way that they too have to find their way to redemption. And so what we're aiming for here is the freedom and the liberty of both the victim and the transgressor. If you augment or increase the scope of your forgiveness to include the victims and the transgressors, then you get that much more torque behind your prayers, behind your practice, behind your meditations, behind your healing practice. I want to say here, for whatever reason, a lot of theistic language is coming out here. I'm not giving this to you from a Christian or any other religious perspective, but there is a place in this discussion for God and for prayer. It's very relevant here. So now I'm going to give you three heavy hitters, three heavy hitting techniques, affirmations that you can use to activate forgiveness. So we'll start with the first one. This is a Matt Kahn tool. This is one of my very favorites. It goes like this. Even as I blank, I love myself completely. Even as I struggle to forgive, I love myself completely. And you would say this out loud with your mouth. I'm not going to do a repeat after me. I'll just give you these to say out loud. You can pause it after I say each one. Even as I struggle to forgive myself, I love myself completely. Even as I struggle to forgive the other, I love myself completely. Even as I wallow in shame and guilt, I love myself completely. Even as I can't stop punishing myself, I love myself completely. Even as I continue to punish myself, I love myself completely. And on we go. And so what that introduces is this cool quality of unconditional love to the conditions. It's an expression of unconditional love, because we're saying by definition, even despite condition blank, I love myself completely. And so there's this blanket or this layer of self-love that starts to envelop your struggle, so that your struggle can be held by something as you work through it. It's an ingenious line. It's super cool. It's so much deeper than it seems. So that's number one. Number two is, it wasn't me, it was my conditioning. So you can look at something about which you feel guilt and shame and say truthfully, honestly, it wasn't me, it was my conditioning. It was my immaturity. And this isn't writing you some sort of get out of jail free card. It's not you absolving yourself of responsibility. It's just looking plainly at the fact that you were acting from your animal evolutionary impulse and not from your maturity. And so there is a grace that can be granted here, to use another theistic term. And then the third one of these is, no apology necessary, no forgiveness necessary. I suggest, if it is your desire to bring an end to your suffering of guilt and shame, that you say that phrase. No forgiveness necessary, no apology necessary. Say this for both ends. Say this on behalf of both the victim and the perpetrator. Say this so that you can finally bring the karmic loop to a close. Say this so that you can finally be liberated. What if the only way to be liberated from this thing is to also liberate the other person? What if that were the only way? Would you be willing to swallow that pill? Would the juice still be worth the squeeze? May both of us be liberated. May all souls be liberated. May we all be liberated. The one who has caused me so much suffering, may he or she be liberated. Can you find that in your heart? This is tricky and it's hardcore. But hardcore practices lead to hardcore liberation. So all this comes down to the intensity of your desire to be liberated. No apology necessary. No forgiveness necessary. May the whole thing come to a close now. May it all be a wash. May it all be washed in forgiveness without any discrimination whatsoever. So having gone through this, and you want to, having tried this out, you may want to check to see if the forgiveness has registered or not. So you can do this by asking, when you think about this thing, is there still an emotional charge around it? Do you feel like, because if you just say like, oh, I'll just forget about it. I'm just going to move past it. I'm just going to put it behind me. It's water under the bridge. Remember, it's very easy to say those words, but you have to check to see if it still feels like pain. So does it still feel like pain? You'll also know the forgiveness is registered if you see yourself in the other person. So if you were the victim in this one and you look at the transgressor, can you find it in yourself to say, well, if I were that person, I suppose I would have done that. That's also really hardcore, right? And then finally, do you still feel guilty? Do you still feel ashamed? Anywhere there's a lack of permission in you to be totally forgiven, to be washed clean, is a lack of wisdom in you, is a lack of intelligence, is a commitment to punishment. And so finally, we can just decide now to receive this lesson, to receive this insight, to receive this intelligence, and to be atoned. To be atoned for. To allow the atonement to be complete by you, for you. Totally atoned. May you be free. May you be liberated. You don't need to beat these lessons over your head. You don't have to. You don't have. There's no worry of you losing the lesson. You won't lose the lesson. I'm almost out of battery. I got to hurry this up. You're not going to lose the lesson. You're not going to lose the insight. And you can rest assured you won't do it again. Like if you've been hurting about it for years, right? And you're like, oh, I got to hurt myself about it because I'm afraid I may do it again. You won't. You won't. You've learned. Because you took the natural guilt that has signaled that you won't do it again. That natural guilt means you're not going to do it anymore, but you've extended and elongated it into artificial suffering, artificial guilt, which is serving no one and is not driving the lesson in any deeper. Something to consider. I love you. Thank you for receiving this. Check out the links below if you're interested in what it would be like to allow me to assist you in becoming a more actualized version of yourself. Don't let any budget thing get in the way. If you want the work, if you want the support, we'll make something happen, I promise. I can almost guarantee. I can't do it for $5, but if you're interested and if you have any budget, just hit me up, just get in touch. We'll see what we can do. Talk to you soon.